The first time Amelia Carter walked into the towering glass headquarters of the Han Group in downtown Seoul, she had no idea her life was about to shatter. She carried nothing more than a folder of architectural designs, a cup of coffee, and dreams that had taken years of sacrifice to build. At 27, she believed hard work could overcome anything. She believed loyalty mattered. She believed love was something that grew stronger through struggle. Most of all, she believed the man waiting upstairs, her boyfriend of 6 years, Ethan Hahn, was the person she would spend the rest of her life with. She couldn't have been more wrong. The elevator doors opened to applause echoing through the executive floor. Employees lined the hallway, celebrating the announcement that Ethan had officially been promoted to vice president of the Han Group. Amelia smiled proudly, clutching the engagement ring she had secretly purchased the week before, planning to surprise him that evening. Instead, as she stepped toward the conference room, the laughter inside suddenly fell silent. Through the glass wall, she saw Ethan wrapping his arm around someone she recognized instantly. Chloe, her best friend since college, the woman who had cried on Amelia's shoulder after every failed relationship. The woman Amelia had helped pay rent for when times were difficult. The woman she had trusted with every secret. Before Amelia could process what she was seeing, Ethan kissed Chloe in front of the entire room. Cheers erupted. Champagne glasses clinked together. Amelia stood frozen as the folder slipped from her hands, papers scattering across the polished floor. Every eye turned toward her. Ethan's smile disappeared for only a second before his expression hardened into cold indifference. "Amelia," he said calmly, "this isn't how I wanted you to find out." Chloe lowered her eyes but didn't step away from him. Instead, she leaned closer against Ethan's shoulder, as if claiming a prize she had already won. Amelia waited for someone to laugh and say it was a cruel joke. Nobody did. Her heart pounded so loudly she barely heard Ethan continue. "We've been together for almost a year, 1 year. During that same year, Amelia had worked overtime to support Ethan's career, skipped vacations to save money for their future, and even sold her grandmother's jewelry to help him invest in a business opportunity. Every sacrifice suddenly felt like another knife twisting inside her chest. "Why?" she whispered. Ethan shrugged. "People change." Chloe finally spoke, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm sorry, we never meant for it to happen." Amelia stared at the woman who had called herself a sister. "You had breakfast with me yesterday." Chloe couldn't answer. Ethan simply sighed impatiently. "Let's not make a scene." A scene. 6 years reduced to an inconvenience. Amelia bent down, gathered the scattered pages with trembling hands, and walked away without another word. The elevator doors closed, and only then did the tears come. She cried all the way back to her apartment, not because she had lost Ethan, but because she had lost the future she thought they were building together. 2 weeks later, life delivered another devastating surprise. The doctor looked at Amelia with a gentle smile. "Congratulations. You're expecting." The room spun. She hadn't planned this. She hadn't even imagined raising a child alone. Yet, as the ultrasound flickered across the screen, she placed a trembling hand over her stomach. Despite everything Ethan had done, the tiny heartbeat she heard wasn't responsible for his betrayal. It deserved love. It deserved protection. Amelia left the clinic determined to tell Ethan, not because she wanted him back, but because he deserved to know he was going to become a father. She never got the chance. That evening, headlines exploded across every business news channel. Ethan Hahn and Chloe Bennett announced their engagement during a lavish charity gala. Reporters praised them as the city's newest power couple. Amelia quietly switched off the television. She deleted Ethan's number without making the call. Some people walked away from responsibility long before they admitted it. She would not beg someone to care. The following morning, as rain poured over Seoul, Amelia noticed an elderly man collapse near a busy intersection. Hundreds of people hurried past, shielding themselves with umbrellas, pretending not to see. Without hesitation, Amelia ran into traffic, knelt beside him, and called for an ambulance. She removed her own coat to keep him warm, despite shivering in the cold rain herself. The old man opened his eyes just long enough to ask, "Why would you help a stranger?" Amelia smiled through exhausted tears. Because someone should. She never asked his name. She simply stayed beside him until the ambulance arrived, then quietly disappeared before anyone could thank her. What Amelia didn't know was that the man she had rescued wasn't an ordinary stranger. Watching from a black armored sedan parked across the street, several heavily armed security officers stared in disbelief. Their commander lowered his phone after speaking only 3 words. "We found her." Far inside one of Seoul's most heavily guarded estates, the leader of the powerful Han family listened silently as surveillance footage played across a massive screen. The chairman watched the young woman kneeling in the rain, protecting an elderly stranger with her own coat while everyone else walked away. His cold expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Find out everything about Amelia Carter," he ordered. Immediately, none of the men in the room dared question why one simple act of kindness had captured the attention of the most feared man in Korea. None of them realized that Amelia's decision to help a stranger was about to pull her into a world of unimaginable danger, hidden enemies, family secrets, and a destiny she had never imagined. And somewhere in the city, Ethan and Chloe celebrated their perfect new life, completely unaware that the greatest mistake they had ever made was letting Amelia walk away. Amelia spent the next several days trying to convince herself that life could still move forward. Every morning, she forced a smile before leaving her apartment. Every afternoon, she buried herself in freelance design work, and every evening, she sat alone, wondering how she would raise a child without the future she had once imagined. She refused to let bitterness define her. Instead of dwelling on Ethan's betrayal, she volunteered at a neighborhood community center, helping elderly residents renovate their aging homes free of charge. The work exhausted her, but it reminded her that kindness still existed in a world that had shown her so much cruelty. Unknown to Amelia, a black luxury sedan remained parked across the street almost every day. The occupants never approached her. They simply watched, reported, and disappeared before she noticed. Inside the Han estate, Chairman Daniel Han studied every report placed on his desk. His advisors expected him to focus on expanding the family's international business empire. But instead, he asked about the young architect who had rescued an old man in the rain. "Did she accept any reward?" he asked. "No, Chairman," his chief of security replied. She refused payment from the community center as well. She even donated part of her earnings to help repair a children's library. Daniel remained silent. In his world, every favor carried a price, every smile hid an agenda. Yet this woman seemed different. She expected nothing in return. That made her either incredibly genuine or incredibly dangerous. Meanwhile, Ethan's life appeared perfect from the outside. Business magazines celebrated his promotion, while entertainment websites praised his glamorous engagement to Chloe. Behind closed doors, however, tension slowly crept into their relationship. Chloe noticed Ethan checking his phone late at night. He denied thinking about Amelia, but guilt lingered every time he remembered how quietly she had walked away without begging or screaming. Her silence haunted him far more than anger ever could. Chloe sensed it. "You don't miss her?" she asked one evening. "Do you?" Ethan answered too quickly. "Of course not." She smiled, pretending to believe him, but doubt settled deep inside her heart. Across the city, Amelia attended another prenatal appointment. Hearing her baby's heartbeat gave her strength she never knew she possessed. She placed both hands gently over her stomach and whispered, "I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but I promise you'll always be loved." As she left the hospital, she noticed an elderly woman struggling to carry several heavy grocery bags. Without hesitation, Amelia hurried over and helped her home, refusing any payment. The woman insisted she stay for tea. During their conversation, Amelia learned the woman's grandson desperately needed surgery that the family could barely afford. Amelia quietly transferred nearly all the savings she had set aside for herself into the family's medical fund before leaving. She never told them who had paid the hospital bill. Later that night, Daniel Hahn received another report. She donated almost everything she had, the investigator explained. She barely has enough money left for next month's rent. Daniel closed the file slowly. Most wealthy people give away what they can spare, he murmured. She gives away what she cannot. For the first time in decades, the ruthless chairman smiled. Invite Miss Carter to the Hahn Foundation charity banquet. Should we reveal your interest? No. I want to see who she is when she believes no one important is watching. A week later, Amelia reluctantly accepted the invitation after discovering the banquet raised money for children's hospitals. She borrowed a simple navy blue dress from a friend because she couldn't afford a new one. When she entered the grand ballroom, glittering chandeliers illuminated politicians, celebrities, executives, and foreign investors. Amelia immediately felt out of place. Conversations stopped as Ethan and Chloe entered arm in arm, dressed like royalty. Ethan froze the moment he saw Amelia. She looked healthier than he expected, despite everything that had happened. There was sadness in her eyes, but also quiet confidence. Chloe tightened her grip on Ethan's arm before leading him toward Amelia with a polite smile that barely concealed her insecurity. "Amelia," Chloe said softly. "I didn't know you'd be here." Amelia nodded politely. "Neither did I." Ethan looked uncomfortable. "How have you been?" "Better every day." The answer surprised him. He had expected tears, accusations, or regret. Instead, she simply excused herself and walked toward the charity auction. Watching her leave, Ethan felt an unfamiliar emptiness. At that moment, Daniel Hahn entered the ballroom. Every guest immediately fell silent. Even powerful executives lowered their heads respectfully. Ethan straightened his suit, expecting his father to congratulate him publicly. Instead, Daniel walked past his son without saying a word. He continued across the room until he reached Amelia. Hundreds of guests watched in stunned silence as the feared chairman gently pulled out a chair for the young woman before taking the seat beside her. Whispering spread through the ballroom like wildfire. Ethan stared in disbelief. His father rarely showed kindness to anyone, not even members of his own family. Yet here he was asking Amelia if she had eaten dinner and whether she was feeling well. Amelia, unaware of the family connection, thanked him politely for organizing such a meaningful charity event. Daniel listened carefully as she shared ideas for expanding educational programs for underprivileged children. Every answer confirmed what his investigators had discovered. She cared more about helping others than impressing powerful people. Across the room, Ethan's face slowly lost its color as realization began to form. The woman he had discarded without a second thought had somehow earned the respect of the one man whose approval he had spent his entire life trying to win. And for the first time since betraying Amelia, Ethan felt something far more painful than guilt. He felt fear. Amelia tried to ignore the hundreds of curious eyes fixed on her as she sat beside Chairman Daniel Hahn. She assumed he was simply being courteous because she had accepted the invitation to support the charity. She had no idea that nearly every powerful person in the ballroom was wondering why the ruthless patriarch of the Hahn family had chosen to spend the evening talking to an unknown architect instead of greeting politicians, billionaires, or even his own son. Daniel observed Amelia carefully as she spoke about affordable housing projects and community centers instead of luxury buildings. Her passion wasn't for fame or wealth. It was for creating places where ordinary families could feel safe. That sincerity reminded him of someone he had lost many years ago. "Miss Carter?" Daniel asked calmly. "If someone destroyed your trust completely, would you ever forgive them?" Amelia paused before answering. "Forgiveness is possible. Trust is different. Once someone chooses to betray you, they can't expect life to return to what it was before." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. Across the room, Ethan overheard every word. Each sentence felt directed at him, even though Amelia never looked his way. Chloe noticed his expression and quietly whispered, "Stop staring at her." Ethan forced himself to look away, but he couldn't stop thinking about the woman he had taken for granted. As dinner began, the charity auction started raising funds for children's hospitals. Luxury watches, paintings, vintage cars, and rare jewelry were sold for astonishing amounts. Amelia remained silent throughout, knowing she couldn't afford to participate. Then the host introduced the final item, a hand-drawn architectural sketch created by children recovering from cancer treatment. Unlike the expensive collectibles, it carried almost no market value. The room fell quiet. Wealthy guests smiled politely but showed little interest. Amelia slowly raised her bidding paddle. $10,000, she said. Gasps echoed around the ballroom. That amount represented nearly everything she had left. Daniel glanced toward her. "Miss Carter, are you certain?" She smiled gently. "Those children created this believing someone would treasure it. I don't want them thinking their work wasn't worth anything." Before the auctioneer could strike the gavel, another voice interrupted. 20,000. Everyone turned toward Ethan. He wasn't interested in the drawing. He simply wanted to outbid Amelia. The room buzzed with whispers. Amelia quietly lowered her paddle, unwilling to compete. Daniel watched his son's smug expression for several seconds before calmly lifting his own bidding card. $1 million. Silence consumed the ballroom. Even the auctioneer froze in disbelief. Daniel never looked at Ethan. He simply accepted the children's drawing with genuine appreciation. The applause that followed wasn't for the money. It was for the unexpected gesture. Ethan clenched his jaw. Once again, his father had ignored him completely. After the event ended, Amelia stepped outside into the cool evening air. She was exhausted and emotionally drained. Before she could call a taxi, she noticed a frightened little boy standing alone near the entrance, crying uncontrollably. Guests hurried past without stopping. Amelia immediately knelt beside him. "Hey," she said softly, "what's your name?" "Minho," the child sobbed. "I can't find my mommy." Amelia comforted him, removed a small teddy bear keychain from her purse, and handed it to him until security located his parents. His grateful mother hugged Amelia with tears in her eyes before taking her son home. Daniel had witnessed the entire scene from inside the building. His security chief approached quietly. "Chairman, shall we escort Miss Carter home?" Daniel shook his head. "No, she values her independence." As Amelia began walking toward the subway station instead of waiting for an expensive ride, Daniel gave one final order. Protect her from a distance. She must never know. Meanwhile, Ethan confronted his father inside the ballroom after the last guests had departed. "Why are you interested in her?" he demanded. Daniel slowly turned to face him. "Should I need your permission?" Ethan hesitated. "She's just someone I used to know." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Used to know?" He opened a file lying on the table and slid several photographs toward Ethan. Images showed Amelia volunteering, helping elderly people, donating money, and rescuing strangers. This woman has more integrity in one day than many executives demonstrate in an entire lifetime. Ethan's confidence faded. Daniel continued, "Do you know what disappoints me most? Not that you ended your relationship. That is your decision. What disappoints me is that you failed to recognize the value of the person standing beside you." Ethan remained speechless. For years, he had fought desperately to earn a single compliment from his father. Instead, Daniel praised the woman Ethan had betrayed. Chloe happened to overhear part of the conversation while waiting outside the office. Panic spread across her face. She had expected Amelia to disappear quietly from their lives forever. Instead, she seemed to be becoming more important to the Hahn family with every passing day. That night, Amelia returned to her apartment completely unaware that powerful forces were already moving around her. She placed the tiny teddy bear keychain's matching charm on her bedside table and smiled, thinking only of the little boy she had helped. Then she looked at the ultrasound picture of her unborn baby and whispered, "Maybe someday you'll grow up in a kinder world." At that exact moment, several black SUVs stopped outside the apartment building. Daniel's elite security team took up discreet positions around the neighborhood after intelligence reports revealed that one of the Han family's enemies had begun investigating the mysterious young woman who had unexpectedly captured the chairman's attention. Amelia believed she was simply going to sleep after another ordinary day. She had no idea that by sunrise, her life would never be ordinary again. Amelia woke before sunrise feeling strangely uneasy. From the window of her small apartment, she noticed nothing unusual, only quiet streets glistening after the night's rain. She prepared for another busy day, completely unaware that several members of Daniel Han's elite security team had already been watching the neighborhood for hours. Intelligence reports had revealed that a rival criminal organization was searching for the mysterious young woman who had unexpectedly gained the chairman's attention. Daniel had given only one instruction: protect her without disrupting her life. Amelia left for the community center, carrying blueprints for a free renovation project. On the subway, she offered her seat to an exhausted pregnant woman, then helped an elderly passenger retrieve a dropped cane before stepping off at her stop. Small acts of kindness came naturally to her, never performed for recognition. Across the street, two men pretending to read newspapers quietly photographed her every movement. Before they could send the images to their employer, Daniel's security detail intercepted them and confiscated their devices without Amelia noticing anything unusual. At the Han Group headquarters, Ethan walked into the executive boardroom expecting another routine meeting, only to discover his father waiting at the head of the table. Daniel's expression was unreadable. "I've reviewed last quarter's reports," he said. "Your numbers are acceptable, but leadership is measured by character, not profit." Ethan understood the hidden criticism immediately. Before he could respond, Daniel dismissed the meeting and walked away, leaving every executive wondering why the chairman seemed increasingly disappointed in his own son. Chloe, meanwhile, grew more anxious with every passing day. She had started noticing whispers whenever Amelia's name was mentioned. Employees who once admired Chloe now quietly compared her selfish ambition with Amelia's generosity. Determined to protect her image, Chloe hired a private investigator to learn everything about Amelia's recent activities. She expected to uncover secrets or scandals. Instead, the investigator returned with a thick file documenting volunteer work, charitable donations, and countless examples of Amelia helping complete strangers. Chloe slammed the file shut in frustration. "Nobody can be this perfect," she muttered. "Keep digging." Later that afternoon, Amelia received unexpected news. One of her architectural designs for affordable family housing had won an international competition, earning her an invitation to present the project before investors from several countries. The prize money would be enough to secure a comfortable future for her unborn child. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Amelia quietly thanked everyone who had supported her over the years, never realizing that Daniel himself had anonymously ensured her proposal reached the final judging panel. Because he believed talent deserved opportunity, he had not influenced the judge's decision, only made sure her work was seen. As Amelia left the design studio carrying the acceptance letter, she noticed a little girl sitting alone outside a bakery, crying softly. The child explained she had lost the money her grandmother had given her to buy bread. Without hesitation, Amelia purchased fresh bread, warm soup, and several pastries before walking the little girl home. Watching from a nearby vehicle, Daniel's chief of security smiled. "She keeps proving your instincts right, Chairman." Daniel looked out the window thoughtfully. Power reveals who people are when they have everything. Kindness reveals who they are when they have almost nothing. That evening, Ethan unexpectedly visited Amelia's apartment building. He had rehearsed countless apologies during the drive, but lost every word when Amelia opened the door. She looked calmer than he remembered, stronger somehow. "Why are you here?" she asked quietly. Ethan lowered his eyes. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Amelia listened without anger. You made a choice, Ethan. Mistakes happen in seconds. Choices are made over and over again. He struggled to answer. Can we at least talk? Before Amelia could respond, a black sedan slowly rolled past the building. Ethan recognized the discreet security insignia hidden behind the windshield. His face turned pale. Those vehicles belonged to his father's personal protection unit. They were never assigned to ordinary civilians. Realizing Amelia was under Daniel's protection, Ethan finally understood how serious the situation had become. Amelia noticed his sudden silence but misunderstood the reason. There's nothing left to discuss, she said gently before closing the door. Ethan remained standing in the hallway for several minutes, overwhelmed by regret. As he walked away, one of Daniel's security officers calmly stepped from the shadows. Mr. Hahn, he said politely, the chairman requests that you stop visiting Miss Carter unless she invites you herself. Ethan stared at the guard in disbelief. His own father had never once assigned elite protection to him with such personal concern. Driving home alone, Ethan realized he had lost far more than a relationship. He had lost the trust of the one woman who had loved him without conditions and the respect of the father whose approval he had chased his entire life. Unbeknownst to all of them, the rival organization monitoring Amelia had already decided that if they could not understand why Daniel Hahn was protecting an ordinary architect, they would simply capture her and force the truth out of the Hahn family, setting into motion a dangerous chain of events that none of them could stop. Amelia spent the next morning preparing for her international presentation, carefully reviewing every drawing and budget estimate she had created over months of hard work. She wanted the project to succeed not for fame, but because affordable housing could change the lives of thousands of struggling families. As she walked toward the conference center carrying her portfolio, she noticed a young street musician performing with an old violin, while very few people stopped to listen. Before entering the building, Amelia quietly placed the last cash she had in her wallet into the musician's collection case and wished him good luck. She never saw the smile that spread across his face after she disappeared inside. High above the city, Daniel Hahn watched the live security feed from his office. Every report about Amelia strengthened his belief that genuine kindness still existed in a world where power usually corrupted people. His advisors questioned why he invested so much effort protecting a woman who had no connection to the Hahn family's business. Daniel simply replied, "Some people protect wealth. Others protect hope. Hope is much harder to replace." Meanwhile, the rival organization continued investigating Amelia. Their leader, Victor Kang, believed she possessed information capable of influencing Daniel Hahn. Unable to understand the true reason behind Daniel's concern, Victor concluded that Amelia must secretly be an important witness or hidden business partner. He ordered his men to observe her presentation and seize any opportunity to question her. Inside the conference hall, architects and investors from around the world listened as Amelia confidently explained her vision of safe, affordable communities where children could grow up with dignity regardless of their family's income. Her presentation was filled with practical ideas, instead of expensive luxury features, and by the time she finished speaking, the audience responded with enthusiastic applause. Several international investors immediately expressed interest in funding the project. Amelia felt hopeful for the first time in months. As guests began leaving the hall, one elderly investor suddenly collapsed after suffering a heart attack. Panic spread throughout the room as people backed away in confusion. Amelia rushed forward without hesitation, remembering the first aid training she had received years earlier while volunteering. She remained calm, instructed someone to call emergency services, and continued helping until paramedics arrived. Doctors later confirmed that her quick actions had saved the man's life. Unknown to Amelia, the elderly investor happened to be one of Daniel Hahn's oldest business partners. News of her bravery reached Daniel before the ambulance even arrived at the hospital. He quietly smiled before returning to work. Across the city, Ethan watched the presentation replay on the news. Every interview praised Amelia's intelligence, compassion, and professionalism. He realized she had achieved success entirely on her own, despite everything he had put her through. Chloe watched the same broadcast with growing frustration. Every positive headline about Amelia felt like another threat to the future she had fought to secure. Desperate to regain control, Chloe secretly contacted a tabloid reporter and fabricated rumors suggesting Amelia had manipulated wealthy executives for personal gain. The article spread quickly across social media, attracting thousands of comments before anyone verified the claims. Amelia discovered the false accusations while riding the subway home. Although hurt, she refused to respond publicly. She believed the truth would eventually reveal itself without bitterness or revenge. Daniel, however, reacted differently. Within hours, his legal team uncovered evidence linking the fabricated story to Chloe's anonymous source. Without issuing threats or public statements, the Han family's attorneys filed defamation proceedings against the publisher, demanding a full investigation. The newspaper quickly retracted the article and published a formal apology to Amelia on its front page. Chloe panicked as reporters began questioning the origin of the false information. Ethan confronted her after learning what she had done. "You lied about her?" he asked in disbelief. Chloe tried defending herself, insisting she was protecting their future, but Ethan walked away before she finished speaking. For the first time since their relationship began, he wondered whether the life he had chosen had been built entirely on deception. That evening, Amelia returned home exhausted, grateful, only that the truth had prevailed. She gently placed her hand over her growing baby bump and whispered that tomorrow would be better. At that exact moment, several blocks away, Victor Kang's men finalized their plans. Realizing Daniel's security made a direct attack impossible, they decided to wait until Amelia traveled alone to inspect one of her community housing projects outside the city. Their objective was simple: capture her, discover why Daniel Han considered her important, and use that information to weaken the powerful Han family. Neither Amelia nor Daniel realized that the greatest danger was no longer approaching. It had already begun moving toward them. Amelia left the city early the next morning to inspect the construction site, where her affordable housing project would soon begin. The rolling countryside felt peaceful, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to imagine a future where her child would grow up surrounded by kindness instead of betrayal. She carried only her blueprints, a notebook, and the ultrasound picture she always kept tucked safely inside her bag. Several hundred meters behind her vehicle, two unmarked SUVs maintained a careful distance. Daniel Han's security team had quietly followed her route exactly as instructed. Their orders remained unchanged. Protect Miss Carter without interfering with her independence, unless her life was in immediate danger. At the same time, Victor Kang's men prepared their ambush along a narrow mountain road leading to the construction site. They believed Amelia possessed secrets capable of influencing the powerful Han family and intended to force those answers from her. Their plan seemed flawless until one of Daniel's surveillance specialists detected suspicious vehicles moving into position. Within seconds, encrypted messages reached every security unit in the area. The quiet morning suddenly became a race against time. Amelia, completely unaware of the danger surrounding her, stopped her car after noticing an overturned delivery van beside the road. Smoke drifted from the damaged engine, while a frightened father struggled to free his injured teenage daughter from the passenger seat. Without thinking about her own safety, Amelia rushed toward the wreckage. She helped pull the girl through the shattered window moments before flames spread across the engine compartment. The grateful father repeatedly thanked her, while emergency responders hurried to the scene. Hidden on a nearby hillside, Victor Kang's men watched in frustration. Their target had stopped in an unexpected location crowded with witnesses, making an immediate kidnapping impossible. Their leader ordered everyone to wait for another opportunity. Daniel received a live report inside his office. Instead of hearing about the attempted surveillance, the first words from his security chief were, "She saved another family today." Daniel closed his eyes briefly before saying, "She risks herself for strangers every chance she gets." His advisor asked quietly, "Why does that matter so much to you, Chairman?" Daniel looked toward an old framed photograph on his desk. "Because years ago, someone did the same for my family, and I never had the chance to repay that kindness." Meanwhile, Ethan's professional life began falling apart. Several senior executives questioned his recent decisions, and rumors spread that Daniel planned to appoint a different successor to lead the Han Group. Ethan knew exactly why. His father had never forgiven weakness disguised as ambition. Betraying someone who had stood beside him for years revealed a lack of judgment that no financial success could erase. Chloe, increasingly desperate, confronted Ethan in their luxurious apartment. "You're thinking about her again," she accused. Ethan answered honestly for the first time. "I'm thinking about the person I became." Chloe realized she was losing him, not to romance, but to regret. Across town, Amelia arrived at the completed housing site, where local families gathered to celebrate the project's approval. Children ran across the open field laughing, while elderly residents thanked her for designing homes they could actually afford. One little boy handed Amelia a drawing of a small house with flowers in the yard. "This is where my grandma and I will live someday," he said with a huge smile. Amelia accepted the picture with tears in her eyes, realizing that every sleepless night and every sacrifice had been worthwhile. Hidden among the crowd, Daniel watched the celebration from a distance without revealing himself. Seeing families filled with hope because of Amelia's work confirmed that protecting her had never been a business decision. It was an investment in someone capable of changing lives. As the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed, Victor Kang received disappointing news that another opportunity had slipped away. Furious, he abandoned his original plan. "No more waiting," he growled. "If we can't take her quietly, we'll attack where she feels safest." His men immediately began gathering information about Amelia's apartment, her daily routine, and everyone close to her. That evening, Daniel's intelligence network intercepted fragments of the plan. The threat had escalated beyond surveillance. For the first time, Daniel gave an order he had hoped never to issue. "Bring Miss Carter to the estate," he said calmly. "She deserves to know the danger she is in." As Amelia returned home believing she had simply experienced another meaningful day helping others, she noticed a black sedan waiting outside her apartment building. A familiar security officer stepped forward respectfully. "Miss Carter," he said, "Chairman Han would like to speak with you. It's about your safety." Amelia looked from the officer to the waiting car, completely unaware that accepting the invitation would pull her into a hidden war that had been unfolding around her all along. Amelia stood silently outside her apartment building, her hand instinctively resting over her stomach as she looked from the security officer to the waiting black sedan. Every instinct told her to refuse. She had spent months rebuilding her life by relying only on herself and stepping into a stranger's car, especially one connected to the powerful Han family, felt like walking into another world entirely. The security officer noticed her hesitation and spoke respectfully. "Miss Carter, no one will force you. The chairman only wishes to explain why your safety has suddenly become a priority." Amelia studied his calm expression before finally nodding. "I'll listen, but afterward, I'm going home." The officer opened the door, and the sedan pulled away into the quiet evening. Nearly 30 minutes later, the vehicle entered a private estate hidden behind towering gates and carefully maintained gardens. Amelia had never seen anything so grand, yet the atmosphere felt strangely peaceful rather than intimidating. Inside the main residence, Daniel Han waited alone in a spacious library lined with thousands of books instead of weapons or displays of wealth. He stood as Amelia entered and thanked her for coming. "Please sit," he said. Amelia remained standing. "Your people have been following me for weeks. I deserve an explanation." Daniel nodded. "You do." He calmly revealed that a dangerous rival organization had begun investigating her after noticing his interest in the woman who had repeatedly helped strangers without expecting anything in return. Amelia listened in stunned silence. "I don't understand," she said. "Why would anyone care about me?" Daniel answered honestly. "Because they do not understand me. They assume anyone I choose to protect must hold great value." Amelia sighed softly. "I'm just an architect trying to build affordable homes." Daniel looked directly at her. "Exactly. You remind people that kindness still exists. Some see that as strength. Others see it as a weakness to exploit." Before Amelia could respond, Daniel's chief of security entered the library with urgent news. Surveillance teams had detected suspicious vehicles circling Amelia's apartment building only minutes after she had left. Daniel quietly ordered additional protection for every resident in the building to ensure no innocent neighbors were placed at risk. Amelia immediately stood. "They're after me because of this misunderstanding. Then I'll leave the city." Daniel shook his head. Running would only encourage them. Amelia lowered her eyes, frustrated that her ordinary life had become so complicated through no choice of her own. Daniel noticed her anxiety and softened his voice. "None of this is your fault. My responsibility is to end the threat without allowing it to reach you." At that moment, one of the household staff entered carrying tea. The elderly woman smiled warmly at Amelia before quietly thanking her for helping her grandson months earlier, without realizing they were connected to the Han estate. Amelia looked surprised. "That was your grandson?" The woman nodded with grateful tears. "The surgery you paid for saved his life." Amelia immediately tried to explain that she had only wanted to help, but the woman gently embraced her instead. Daniel watched silently, realizing that even inside his own home, Amelia continued changing lives without knowing it. Meanwhile, Ethan learned that Amelia had been escorted to the Han estate. Panic mixed with curiosity as he drove toward the gates, only to be stopped by security. For the first time in his life, he was denied entry to his own family residence. "The chairman is in a private meeting," the guard explained politely. Ethan stared at the closed gates in disbelief. Chloe arrived moments later after secretly following him. She demanded to know why Amelia had been invited inside while they remained outside. Neither security officer answered. The silence only deepened Chloe's fear that Amelia's place within the Han family's future was becoming increasingly significant. Inside the estate, Daniel finished explaining everything he knew about the rival organization. He offered Amelia temporary protection until the danger passed. She remained quiet for several moments before asking a single question. "If I accept your help, will innocent people around me be safer?" Daniel answered immediately. "Yes." Amelia smiled sadly. "Then I'll stay until this is over." Daniel nodded with quiet respect. He understood that she had accepted not for herself but to protect everyone else who might become caught in the conflict. Far across the city, Victor Kang received confirmation that Amelia had entered the Han estate. Instead of discouraging him, the news strengthened his suspicions. "I was right," he told his men. "She is important to Daniel Han." He began planning something far more dangerous than kidnapping. If Amelia could not be taken easily, he would attack the Han family's business empire, hoping to force Daniel into making a mistake. Unaware of the new threat taking shape, Amelia spent her first evening at the estate, walking through the peaceful gardens beneath the stars. For the first time in months, she felt a small sense of safety, not realizing that the greatest battle was no longer about protecting her alone. It was about protecting everyone whose lives had become connected through her extraordinary compassion. Amelia's first days at the Han estate were quieter than she expected. Rather than being treated like a guest of honor, she was given the freedom to continue her work, visit her construction sites under discreet protection, and focus on preparing for the birth of her child. Daniel Hahn never tried to control her decisions. Instead, he simply ensured that she had the resources to continue helping others safely. As the days passed, Amelia gradually understood that Daniel's respect for her came not from power or obligation, but from the countless moments in which she had chosen compassion over convenience. Meanwhile, Victor Kang launched his final move. His organization attempted to sabotage one of the Han Group's community housing developments, hoping to draw Daniel into a public confrontation and use Amelia as leverage. However, Daniel had anticipated the attack. His security teams coordinated with law enforcement, evacuating workers and nearby families before the criminals arrived. The operation ended without innocent lives being lost, and Victor Kang's organization was dismantled after authorities gathered enough evidence to arrest its leadership. With the threat gone, Daniel quietly reduced Amelia's security detail, honoring his promise to let her return to a normal life as soon as it was safe. Ethan watched the news coverage in silence. He saw interviews praising Amelia's housing project for providing affordable homes to hundreds of families, and recognized that she had built a meaningful future without him. Carrying the weight of his mistakes, he requested one final meeting. Amelia agreed to meet him in a public park. Ethan apologized sincerely, admitting that ambition and selfishness had blinded him to the person who had stood beside him through every hardship. Amelia listened without anger. When he finished, she smiled gently and said, "I forgive you, Ethan, because carrying resentment only hurts me. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the past. Some chapters end so that better ones can begin." Ethan nodded with tears in his eyes, finally accepting the consequences of his choices. Chloe, having lost both Ethan's trust and the respect she had chased so desperately, left the city to begin rebuilding her own life away from the spotlight. Months later, Amelia gave birth to a healthy baby. Holding her child for the first time, she realized that every painful moment she had endured had led her to this new beginning. Daniel visited the hospital briefly, bringing only a small handmade wooden toy instead of an extravagant gift. "Every child deserves a future built on hope," he said before quietly leaving, allowing Amelia to enjoy the moment with her newborn. As the years passed, Amelia's affordable housing initiative expanded across the country, creating safe neighborhoods, schools, parks, and community centers for thousands of families. Her work attracted volunteers, architects, and philanthropists from around the world who shared her vision that good design could improve ordinary lives. Daniel remained one of the project's strongest supporters through the Hahn Foundation, never seeking recognition for his contributions. The Hahn family's reputation gradually shifted from being known only for power and influence to also being recognized for investing in education, healthcare, and community development. Ethan eventually dedicated himself to charitable projects within the company, not to erase his past, but to become someone worthy of respect through his actions rather than his title. One sunny afternoon, Amelia stood outside the very first neighborhood her organization had built. Children laughed as they rode bicycles along safe streets, while elderly residents relaxed in gardens they had once believed they would never have. A little girl ran up to Amelia and handed her a drawing of a smiling family standing in front of a small house surrounded by flowers. "Thank you," the girl said. "Now we finally have a place to call home." Amelia smiled, holding her child's hand as she looked across the neighborhood filled with hope. She realized that although betrayal had once broken her heart, choosing kindness instead of bitterness had led her to build something far greater than the future she had originally imagined. A future where countless other families could begin again. The journey that had started with heartbreak ended not with revenge, but with healing second chances and lives transformed through compassion. Like, subscribe, and support my channel. I really need your support. If you enjoy my video, please share it and leave your feedback in the comments.